Well, let's get more now on the impact on business there. We're joined by Colin Shearing from South Australian Independent Retailers. Colin, firstly, can I thank you for driving such a long way to be with us this afternoon? We're so grateful.
Thank you, Colin.
Let's just start there with Senator Nick Xenophon's comments about compensation, about not enough staff on duty. Do you feel that there should be some compensation for retailers?
Oh, absolutely. Look, this is devastating to the state. It's devastating to small business. We have lots of supermarkets out there at the moment that are still not online, and it takes a long time to get those businesses back operating effectively. We're just getting over the last big blackout we had in this state, and this is about reliability. What we had as a Christmas bonus, I suppose, is now gone, and it will never be recovered.
When you say it takes a while for businesses to get back online, it's not just a matter of, oh, the power's back on now, everything's back to normal.
Absolutely not. I mean, look, what's happened to us as the independent supermarkets have had is that our main wholesale distributor has been put offline as well, which means the loads from their distribution centre to the stores have been delayed.
Right.
And then once we get the goods into, the perishable goods particularly, into the fridges and the freezers, we then have to make sure they're booted up to the right temperature. So there are issues there around hygiene, around food safety. So we've got to be very particular how we do that. And that takes a little bit longer than just switching the switch on and say we're up and running.
So when something like this happens, Colin, do you hear from businesses directly, your organisation, and what do they say? What's the main voice that comes out of their mouths, really, about these instances? Well,
look, the main voice is that this is totally unreliable. It's totally unacceptable. We understand that these storms, some of them are unprecedented. However, there needs to be some mitigating, issues set up here in South Australia, and we need to really get together and start to talk about what we can do to rectify this so it doesn't happen in the future as regularly as it is now. It's getting worse, and coupled with rising prices in the electricity price, small businesses won't be able to tolerate this. They'll be out of business.
Why do you think it's been getting worse?
Why is it getting worse? Well, look, we don't know why it's getting worse, because what we don't understand is that we're on a national grid here where every state is feeding into the grid. So you can actually effectively, the same sort of supermarket interstate in Sydney or Melbourne will be paying around about 7 or 8 cents per kilowatt hour for peak hour usage. Over here, we're looking at 21 cents per kilowatt hour for the peak hour period. That's a trebling. We don't understand why would you have to have different rates in different states when you're on a national grid. It'd be the same as if I'm on Telstra. Why do I have to pay more for my phone plan here in South Australia than I do in Victoria? It's the same system. Now, we understand the transportation between states of electricity is at a cost, but that cost should be shared amongst the states. This is what the national grid, we believe, was all about, was to equalise those prices out there. So that, coupled with the state of the state at the moment in South Australia, with its infrastructure and how the infrastructure is responded to in times of disaster, is not to be tolerated by the small business. Small business cannot tolerate this any longer, and it's not 6 months down the track we need a solution. It's within 3 months. Within 3 months, we're going to have businesses close their door. I mean, at the moment, we've had businesses that can't open their doors because shopping centres can't open. A classic example was Mitcham Shopping Centre here in Adelaide, where the Romeo's Foodland was ready to open, but it couldn't open because the centre was shut down because it couldn't get its generator going. So there's all these sorts of issues around generation. I guess the other ironical thing here with generation is that when we do switch the generators on, and fortunately our owners are way ahead of the game here, we have to be reliant on other forms of energy sources apart from the national grid, because we have to get used to it. And over the last 12 months, some of our retailers have invested heavily into generators. Now, they're driven by diesel. And that defies the logic around renewables.
Colin, can I just talk to you about that 3 months? You said, 3 months some businesses will be out of business. For an independent retailer, for someone effectively often a family-run business, they're employing people, they're basically looking at their ingoings and outgoings very carefully in order to keep that business going. I can imagine that the knock-on effect is quite quick for those businesses. Suddenly you're having to lay off staff, potentially you're having to not order as many goods in, for example, because it can't be sustained. It seems to be very quick for these small businesses to go from opening and quite sustainable to not being sustainable at all.
Absolutely. Look, our retailers are very resilient and we're very competitive and we're proud of our competition over here in South Australia. And I guess we lead the country in the way we compete over here, and we'll continue to do that, absolutely. But look, when it comes to these types of challenges that we have here in South Australia, we're finding that the cost of doing business, that energy becomes number one. The other thing that's happening now too is the insurance industry is looking at our owners and saying, we'll insure you, but the excess is going to go up. So your excess, in some cases, is going to $5,000 before they get their insurance coverage. So they've got to outlay $5,000 extra dollars, which they haven't got. Our margins are so fine, and the cost of doing business now, we've got electricity rearing its head as number one on our cost of doing business, where wages is slipping down to number two.
Okay, Colin Shearing, it would be great to catch up with you in sort of 3 to 5 months' time and see what effect it has had on those small businesses. Again, thank you for joining us. Have a safe drive back home, and we do appreciate all your time you've given to us today. Thank you.
You're welcome.